We're back to the Neil Haley Show on the Caregiver Dave celebrity segment. I'm excited to welcome the program first. Caregiver Dave. Dave, how are you? New York City, doing speaking, all these different things. You told me when we were talking before this was not going to be a business trip, but it sounds like you're doing a lot of business out there.
I had 3 days of business, and the rest of it is fun. So I'm standing on the sidewalk in front of the New York Bar Association, snuck out of the meeting, and I've got to get back in there in about 20 minutes. Go ahead.
Hey, I got a bunch of different interviews as well. Again, go to neilhaley.com. All the great sponsors, check it out, and all those different things. And I'm excited about our guest, again, because I like looking at specifically enough comeback stories and looking at, overcoming addiction, problems, challenges. I remember the days when I was a professional wrestler and I dealt with a lot of trials in my life, and I overcame and went back to school and got a degree, became a teacher, and have been able to motivate and inspire many people. But I'm excited to welcome the program from MTV and Jackass movie star Brandon Novak. Brandon, thanks for calling, and I appreciate you coming on the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I really look forward to this interview, and I appreciate you guys thinking of me.
Hey,
definitely as a story of redemption.
Absolutely, and that's the thing that we go through in so many ways, Dave, is that at times in our lives we have that turning point, Dave, and I even believe that the caregiver, Dave Nasani's had a turning point, right?
Absolutely.
All right, go ahead with the first question, Dave.
Brandon, how you doing?
I'm good, my friend. A little better than you. I'm not standing on the street corner in New York City hanging out in between bars.
I am thrilled to be here interviewing you. I know that you are an amazing character, a controversial character. And I just want to know, how did it all start? Where did you get your first big break? And then we'll get into the rest of the stuff later.
I got, at the age of 7, my sister gave me a skateboard. And at night when my mother put me to bed, she said, Brandon, what do you want me to do with the skateboard? And I said, I want it in bed with me. She said, why? I said, because if I die, I want it to go with me. The moment that board touched my hand, I knew I was going to be a professional skateboarder. I ate it, I breathed it, I slept it, I dreamt it. At the age of 15, I was designing my pro model for Powell Peralta. I was touring the world with Tony Hawk. I had a private tutor that flew with me. At the age of 14, I was the first skateboarder ever in the world to be endorsed by Gatorade. They were flying me to Chicago to the Quaker Oats building where they made Gatorade at the time, and they put me on one treadmill, and they put Michael Jordan on a treadmill right next to me. And they would put these wires in our noses and down our throats, and they would give us each Gatorade to see the effect it has on different sports players. So the moment I got the skateboard, I knew I was going to be a professional skateboarder. There was no need for, like, a plan B, an option, a trait. Schooling, maybe. No, it did not matter. I was going to be a professional skateboarder.
So that really helped him.
What age were you?
He said, what age did you say you decided that, Brandon?
Yeah, I was at the age of 7, I got my first skateboard. At the age of 15, I was designing my pro model for Powell Peralta.
So, Brandon, the thing that you going and you talk about that break, now think about specifically enough that this sport, when you were 7 years old, I'm sure you didn't know the sport would take you so many places, right?
No, I had no idea. It's funny you proposed that question in such a manner because I always say that skateboarding did for me at a young age what drugs and alcohol did for me at a later age. And both of those things, I had no idea they would take me to the depths of things that they took me to and the places they took me to. Because at a young age, you give me that skateboard and you put me in a room with the prettiest models, I will not only think that they were waiting for me, I'll think that they were dying to marry me. And then I get into drugs and alcohol, and they kind of produce the same feeling that I believe. You know what I mean?
So were the drugs and alcohol before or after you got famous?
They were, I'd say after. They were after. Probably, I picked up around 14, 15. I started drinking heavily. Then I started dabbling into cocaine. Then I started smoking some weed. And then I want to go to bed, so I eat some Xanax. And then before you know it, someone owed me some money for some marijuana that I had sold them. And they didn't have all the money, but they had a bag of heroin. And they gave me that bag of heroin to take off some of the debt that they owed me. I took the bag, I put it in my dresser, and I forgot about it. And like 3 months later, I found it, and I sniffed the line of it. And immediately
Wow.
upon sniffing that line, I threw up instantaneously. But as soon as I was done throwing up, I cut another line.
Now, Brandon, when you're talking
Wow.
about this addiction and different things like that, becoming a star at a young age is a very big challenge, isn't it? That's why we see so many child stars and other, entertainment industry suffering so big because they're exposed to so much at such an early age. And I think that's part of you starting, doing drugs and stuff at an early age is because of the exposure to having the lifestyle that you had, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, to be quite frank here, the movies that I starred in, Jackass, that were extremely successful, they broke box office records several times over, and those TV shows, Viva La Bam, the reality is we were not like professional actors who took classes and studied the art of acting, just got together and pulled a camera out and started doing outrageous things. And all of a sudden, it skyrocketed. It went through the roof. And then what happened was the more outrageous my antics became, the more outlandish my behaviors were, the more in demand I became, which meant the higher my ratings went, which meant the more money that I made. You know what I mean? So, like, I was really confused. I just didn't know what was right or wrong anymore.
Rewarding bad behavior, yeah. I met your buddy Steve-O. We both found ourselves in Albuquerque doing a morning show, and I had a picture with him. And at the time, I didn't even know what Jackass was all about. Everyone said, "Oh my God, you had a picture with Steve-O." I mean, how did you get involved with him and the whole Jackass thing?
Well, so my best friend, the other star of Jackass, was a fellow by the name of Bam Margera. I'm originally from Baltimore, Maryland. Bam Margera is from Westchester, Pennsylvania. Bam Margera is also a professional skateboarder. So at the time, at the age of, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, him and I were the best of friends, but yet arch enemies in skate contests. So we'd practice all year for one particular contest that either he would win or I would win. And it would go back and forth year to year. One year he showed up for that contest that we always battled him, and I didn't show up for it. And he asked another professional skater friend of ours by the name of Bucky Lasix. He said, "Hey, where's Novak at?" Bucky responded, "He's on heroin." Bam didn't even know what heroin was. So now Bam continues to excel in the world of skateboarding, and he makes those movies CKY, which turned into the TV show Jackass and Viva La Bam. I continue to excel in the world of drug addiction. I lose everything. I become homeless. I'm standing on the street corner selling my body. You name it, I'm doing it to get another bag of heroin. And one day I decided to stop into my skate shop, to stop into this local skate shop to see if I could get a couple dollars. And what I didn't know is that Bam was in there the day before doing a skate demo. And when he went in there, he said, "Hey, if you ever see Novak, give him my phone number. Tell him that I'll help him get off drugs if he wants to move to Pennsylvania." I stopped in there the next day. He said, "We're not going to give you any money, but here's Bam's number. He left it for you." He said, "If you want to get clean, call him and he'll help you." A couple days go by. I call him. I take him up on his offer. That was kind of my transition from Baltimore to Pennsylvania. So in a way, I kind of credit Bam for saving my life and getting me out of the streets of Baltimore, because they surely would have swallowed me alive. And around that time is when he had the TV show, the hit MTV show Viva La Bam. And he said, "Look, you can be in the show. You can be a reoccurring character. You can have a credit card. You can borrow a car. And you can get paid for being on the show, but you cannot use heroin." That was like the rules and the guidelines. And that's how that's how I kind of progressed into the whole movie scene.
So that was like the big opportunity of saving. I was going to say, Dave, real quickly, I was saying that basically was your saving grace. If you wouldn't have ran into that, what would have happened to you, Brandon? I wanted to bring up, you talked about heroin. We lost a great WWE ECW star that's from Baltimore, Maryland, Axel Rotten. I worked a couple shots with him before, and I mean, Baltimore is a pretty scary place, isn't it, Brandon, to be on the streets?
Yeah, no, the nickname for Baltimore is Body More or Be More Careful. or murder more. You know what I mean? The streets are not kind. But the reality is, as you just stated, and I'm going to, further insinuate on, the WWE wrestler, me, I was a former professional skateboarder. I had been in movies that broke box office records. I'm a New York Times top 10 selling author who had written a book on addiction. My mother's a nuclear physicist. My brother's an attorney in the White House. My father died as a direct result of the disease of addiction. The reality is the disease of addiction does not discriminate. It doesn't matter if you come from Yale or jail, the White House or the outhouse. The results are all the same, and 1 out of 5 people will be affected.
Wow, that's true.
Today in the nation, 179 people will die as a direct result of an opioid overdose. That's worse than the Vietnam War. That's worse than the peak of the AIDS outbreak. And the sad thing is all those deaths are 100% preventable.
Do you think that it was fame itself that caused you to become addicted to drugs and heroin and alcohol and all that, or do you think it would have happened anyway?
I believe for me it would have happened anyway because my mother, she's not a drug addict or an alcoholic. My brother, my sister, not a drug addict, alcoholic. My father was a drug addict and alcoholic. His father was a drug addict and alcoholic. I was the only one by my father. My brother and sister are by a different man. So I believe I was genetically predisposed to the disease of addiction. But now you pair that with the fact that I'm in those movies, Jackass, and again, the more outlandish my behaviors are, the more outrageous my antics are, the more in demand I become. There was really no 9 to 5 check-in with the boss accountability aspects that would allow me to remain tame. You know what I mean?
Remain sober. The painkillers, especially Brandon, doing these crazy stunts, it's going to be painful the next day you wake up. So you talk about certain drugs because of maybe being depressed or anxious or worried, as we use that as self-medication, but also think about specifically not the pain you were in, to decrease the pain because of you being a skateboarder. A lot of the stunts you were doing on Jackass were not the very safest stunts, were they, Brandon?
No, and that's the thing, right? Now I've already been diagnosed as an addict or an alcoholic. I had been to enough treatment centers to understand that once I pick up a drink or a drug, my life becomes unmanageable immediately. So I know that I'm an addict, I'm an alcoholic. But the beautiful thing about being in like Jackass was for the stunts that nobody wanted to do because they thought it was too crazy, I'd be the first in line saying, I'll do it, because if I get hurt, guess what? That means I get a trip to the hospital, which equals lots of free pain pills. I win. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Did your relatives ever get sober? And if so, how did they do it? And how did you get sober?
Well, my father, unfortunately, he did not. He succumbed to the disease of addiction, and he passed away. What happened with me is a lot of, looking back now, the day that I got sober, which was May 25th, 2015, I can recognize the synchronicity in life's events that had led me to the here and now, which I equate to a whole bunch of series of being divinely inconvenienced or being divinely convenienced, depending upon your perception, meaning that spiritual experience. So what that looked like for me is I was 35 years old. Again, despite being a successful individual, I did things in life that people equate to success or happiness and some even dream of doing, right? Professional skateboarder, hanging out with Michael Jordan, touring the world with Tony Hawk, got a private tour that went with. I had been in movies that broke box office records. I'm a New York Times selling author who's written a book on addiction. Despite those successful accolades, what my life really looked like at the age of 35, is I had just woken up from being on life support for 7 days. My mother had bought me a plot. People had taken life insurance policies out on me. My mother had sold 3 homes to financially pay for me to go to 2 different treatment centers. She had nothing left to give, so she simply went to God with one prayer. That prayer consisted of, God, please cure him, please kill him, or please kill me because I can't take it anymore. I had been in 13 inpatient treatment centers. I had long count of outpatients and detoxes, medevac to 4 different hospitals in 4 different states with 4 different overdoses. I found myself as a homeless heroin addict that wanted to kill himself on a daily basis, but I didn't want to hurt myself in the process. I was horrible at suicide because I kept waking up and I was at a position in life where I was so low the curb looked like a skyscraper. My worldly belongings, everything I owned at the ripe age of 35, despite being a successful individual, consisted of 8 scarves, 2 jackets, 3 socks, 1 stick of deodorant. It fit into a bag that doubled as my pillow, a needle, a spoon, a restraining order that my mother had served me, and 4 cigarette butts that I picked up off the ground. And something seriously happened right now. Because prior to this date, without fail, every time I put a drug in my body or a drink down my throat, a delusional effect was always produced, which would allow me to escape the reality that I had created for myself. Meaning that ignorance was bliss. I was like not only okay with being a homeless heroin addict selling my body for $40, it was actually somewhat enjoyable because once I put that shot of heroin in me, swallowed that pill, sniffed that line, drank that bottle, that delusional effect was produced, I would escape my reality. All fair in love and war. But what do I do at 35 years old when no matter how much heroin I shoot, no matter how much cocaine I sip, no matter how much wine I drink, no matter how many pills I eat, that delusional effect is no longer produced, which means I can no longer escape the reality that I have created for myself, meaning that moment of clarity now takes place 24/7 when I'm high and when I'm sober. It has actually stopped working. What do I do? You know what I mean?
What do you do, Brandon?
Help me out here, Brandon.
Yeah.
What's that?
Give me a moment. Help me out here. How long does it take a multimillionaire drug addict to go through all of that and become broke?
I was always good, right? So like I was financially successful being a pro skater. I blew through that money. Then I end up in those movies, Jackass. I blow through that. So I would always build it up.
Well, that's my
break it
question.
down.
How do you blow through that? How do you blow through that?
Very simple, drugs and alcohol. But look, when my eyes opened, my life was revolved around the getting and using and finding ways and means to get more. Like I didn't go out to dinners. I didn't pay mortgages. I didn't go grocery shopping. I didn't buy clothes or cars. I bought heroin, cocaine, and alcohol, you know?
It's crazy.
Wow.
That's
Must be expensive.
it seems like it's an expensive lifestyle. But also, Brandon, when you were doing those drugs, I'm sure you were buying tons of drinks for people. I'm sure you were buying things for people. You had an entourage probably at times.
Yeah.
Yeah, the entourage of friends, and then they're gone when you're broke, right?
Exactly. In the beginning, there was an entourage. At the end, there was just me standing alone on the sidewalk with 8 scarves, 2 jackets, 3 socks, 1 stick of deodorant, a needle, a spoon, a restraining order, and 4 cigarette butts.
Oh my gosh!
That's all I walked into my 13th street.
So, Brandon, what are you doing now with the speaking? Why do you want to go out now and tell the world about the story? You were finally recovered. You finally said that was it. You want to do it.
Through having that spiritual experience, what I've come to understand is that God has allowed me to turn my adversities into advantages, right? Because here's the reality. 99.9% of an addict in alcohol, 99.9% of addicts and alcoholics, all that simply means, right? If I'm diagnosed as an addict or an alcoholic, what that means is very simple. It means that I'm defiant by nature, I hate authority, and I will never conform unless it becomes my idea. Paired with the fact that I possess this job that consists of knowing everything. So when you tell me what I need to do, I tell you why you need to get lost, because I know. So what I do is I tell people my story. I share it from the rooftops, from the interviews, the radio shows, you name it. Whoever gives me the platform, I will tell it, because I want people to say, if that guy can do it, that guy that was deemed unhelpable or unfixable, if he can do it, there's no reason why I can't. Can you help me? So basically what I'm doing is I'm wrapping the same present up with a different bow in a form of attraction rather than promotion. Does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense.
You know, because addicts were defiant by nature. We hate authority. We'll never conform unless it becomes our idea. If I do it and then I tell you about my story, and then all of a sudden the guy who can't see past the bag, the bottle, the needle, the pill, he says, if Novak can do it, there's no reason why I can't. Can you help me? And now something magnificent happens. Now it becomes his or her idea. And guess what? When it becomes our idea, we excel at a rapid pace. But it has to be our idea.
You know, Evel Knievel did what you have done, and Steve-O, all those guys, and he's suffering in pain every day. How's your body? Are you in pain?
You know what? Ironically enough, it's better than it was. I go to the gym 5 days a week. I have a personal trainer that trains me 2 days a week. I've quit smoking. I'm coming up on 9 months tobacco-free in any form. I make a conscious effort to eat healthier. I pray. I meditate. I'm a much healthier individual all the way around. So believe it or not, I'm probably in the best condition I've ever been in at the ripe age of 39.
See, this is an interesting thing, because thank God is right. But Dave, I have a client, Duke the Dumpster Droese, former WWE star back in the, I guess, the 90s, back before the Attitude Era. And he basically went to almost Brandon's case, where he almost died of heroin as well. And he overcame his addiction, came back through his addiction again, and now he basically has to watch out. Anything that's addicting at all, he cannot. Even if it's not drugs or alcohol, he has to be very careful. So discipline, Brandon, is huge, isn't it? It is absolutely huge on a regular day. You got to be so disciplined, because if you fall from that discipline, you end up going back to the tracks you were at before.
100%.
So you are not healed.
If you ever heard me share my story, I'm very upfront, I'm very descriptive, and I'm very graphic with my story. And as a matter of fact, I keep my past married to my present. Because the moment that I forget where I come from, I can, will, and do return. I've seen me do it in the past, right? But now I always say the God of my understanding brought me to the 12-step program. The 12 steps that I worked have brought me back to the God of my understanding, which allowed me to have that spiritual experience, that I'm a free man that can go anywhere with anybody, anytime I like. I no longer live in that self-induced prison that consists of a 4-block radius that cost me $10 and or a bag of heroin to get out of, one bag at a time. I'm coming up on 4 years sober, May 25th, 2019. I'm going to Amsterdam, where I've rented a nice Airbnb right in the town center, and I'll celebrate my 4 years in Amsterdam. Most people go there for the marijuana consumption or the red light district. I'm literally a free man. I am no longer a bondage of slavery to a bag, a bottle, or a pill, you know? And that only comes through my spiritual experience, which is the conscious contact I have with my higher power.
That's fantastic, Brandon. What events are you going to be doing? Do you have any going out and doing to promote what your addiction? Do you have any events you want to promote right now, Brandon, that are going on about your story?
It's funny. I always say sobriety has given me everything that drugs and alcohol ever promised me. Right, I was the guy that was deemed unhelpful, unfixable. I have a rap sheet longer than I could even explain. But ironically enough, I'm going out to do in 2 days to L.A. to the 2019 Opioid Summit Awareness for the nation, all the DEA agents. And it's me, Dr. Drew, and Jack Osborne. And we're on a panel for all the DEA agents in the nation. You know, that's rather ironic to me. That's the stuff that I like to do, things that most people would say, that's not in your wheelhouse. That just goes to show and prove that anything is possible provided I stay sober. When I want to make my God laugh, I tell him how my day is going to go. But, yeah, so I have a lot of things going on. If you care to follow or keep up to it, you can just go to my website. It's all one word, BrandonNovak.com. Or if anybody's struggling to find their way up and out of the disease of addiction or alcoholism and you can't seem to find yourself looking past the bag, the bottle, or the pill, call me directly, and we'll see what we can do to find a solution for your problem. And that number to reach me directly is 610-546-2609. Because the reality is the disease of addiction is not a death sentence. Your history does not have to dictate your future, and as long as you're breathing, it's never too late.
Fantastic. And Dave has and Dave, you have your final question, but you can ask that other question too, asking him. That's his phone number. I mean, this guy's really transparent. He is amazing, Dave. I told you you can't judge a book by its cover at all, Dave. As his executive producer for Caregiver Dave's segment, saying I think this is going to be a great guest. And Brandon, sometimes your background will haunt you with certain people saying, I don't know if we're going to put this guy on, but I said his story relates to what Dave does. So Dave, tell what you do. And I think that you guys, especially Brandon, if you still live in LA or you're ever out in LA together another time, because Dave's in New York, you need to connect. But go ahead, Dave, with that question.
Well,
First of all, I think you need to contact Wikipedia because I read about you and it's had nothing about your recovery. In fact, I told Neil, I said, Neil, do we really want to do this guy? Because it sounds like he's all messed up. And they don't know, Wikipedia doesn't know, so you can contact them. You can update that. Now, here's my question. I'm a caregiver, 22 years for my wife. She had a stroke, headache, lost her speech, and now she can't talk anymore. She's paralyzed on her right side. And yet, for a couple of years, we grieved, but now we travel the country just helping other caregivers because 30% of them die before their loved ones do. I just want to teach caregivers not to make the same mistakes I did. So I'm saving lives, keeping them out of the hospital, since a lot of them need their, they get sicker than one they're caring for, need a caregiver of their own. Have you had any caregivers in your lives that you've maybe been a caregiver yourself? I don't know.
My mother, the very same mother that bought me a plot, the very same mother that took life insurance policies out on me, the very same one that served me with a restraining order, that went to God and prayed for my death because she couldn't take it anymore, who never said no to me. When I got sober, I took her on a cruise to the Bahamas. I took her. She loves Rod Stewart. I flew her first class to Florida and bought her front row tickets to a Rod Stewart concert, got her backstage to meet her idol. Now my mother is 78 years old, and her time is precious, and she needs to be moved into an assisted living home. But she's not ready to make that transition. So I spend any free moment that I have down in Baltimore taking care of my mother until we can convince her that moving into an assisted living home is the most sensible decision for her to make. Everything comes and goes in full circle, if you ask me. And the reality is my defects have become my biggest asset with the shift of perception, because they told me that my mentality will create the reality for which I live in. So is it why me, or why not me? So, how dare I not go take care of the woman, my mother, who never not took care of me? There's nothing I won't do for that woman. And so if that answers your question, I believe. Yeah.
It sounds like you're going to be a great caregiver. And for those of you who are suffering as caregivers, not taking care of yourself, go to caregiverdave.com and learn how to put your oxygen mask on first.
Brendan, you're fantastic, fabulous. Everyone needs to, again, check you out. I appreciate you coming on, and best of luck, and I hope we connect sometime, and I'm so glad what you're doing, and it's amazing. I'll definitely connect you to Duke the Dumpster Drosy, because he is involved in the same kind of addiction process, and you guys need to talk sometime because they're both entertainers that have gone through the same thing.
And I'd like you to share your message on my radio show to caregivers as well.
All right.
Caregivers sometimes turn to drugs.
I would love to do that. Can I have Allison coordinate that with you guys?
Yes.
I'd love to get on the caregiver show.
Absolutely.
I'm a big fan of that, man. Thank you for what you do for that.
Absolutely, Brandon. I'll connect all that stuff. I already CC'd you in an email, Dave. Just go ahead and reach out to her, and then I'm sure you and Brandon will find out for sure. So, hey, Brandon, thanks for calling, man. Take care, guys, and I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
Take care. All right.
Thank you. Yeah, I live in Philly, so I'm not far from New York, my friend.
All right. Okay.
Awesome.
All right. Take care, guys. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, guys.
All right. Bye-bye.
God bless.
God bless. Take care. Bye-bye. You're listening to Neil Haley's show. We'll be back in just a moment. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Neil Haley Show. You can check me out on Twitter at TotalTutor and NeilHaley.com. This guest is, I'm so excited about this interview. And the reason is because of certain shows he's been on, but he's a great character. Talking to him off air, I know this is going to be such an awesome interview. So I'm excited to welcome the program, author of My Adventures with God, Stephen Tobolowsky. Stephen, thanks for calling. And I tell you, you live a very interesting life, don't you? And just talking about how busy you've been in the last 4 weeks or 6 weeks, Stephen. How are you?
I'm doing great. And actually, you were talking about the last 4 weeks. I was talking about the last 2 years. The last 2 years have been so busy and so nonstop. And what is it about actors? You know, we complain that we never work, and then we complain that we work too much. So I guess we can't quit complaining, but it's been a nonstop 2 years, and I'm happy for that.
And that's great. And so the question before I want to get into a little bit more of the book is, how did you become an actor? Again, how that story of you decided you want to, this is what you want to do for your life. Yeah.
Well, you know, the way this works is sometimes you get a job and sometimes you have a calling. And that doesn't mean you're always accurate in your perception of your calling. So I wanted to be an actor from the time I was a little kid, from the time I was 5. But the reason I wanted to be an actor was misguided. I thought that monsters were real.
Okay.
And I loved monsters. I loved Frankenstein, Wolfman, Mummy, Godzilla. I loved Godzilla. And I thought they were all real. And I thought if I were an actor, I could go hang out with Godzilla on the set, and he would teach me how to have bad breath. But, you know, I learned later that you can have bad breath anyway without having to burn down a city. When I got older, I realized monsters weren't real, and by then I was in college, and I thought acting was noble. I had just really learned Shakespeare and Shaw and Chekhov and Ibsen, and I thought, what a noble calling to deal with this great, great literature. And then I became a professional actor, and you never really work with that great literature again. I think once I did a Shakespeare, once I did 2 Chekhov plays and 1 Ibsen, and that's it. And most of the time, if you're doing sitcom or television, you're working on popular comedies that aren't necessarily great literature, but they entertain a lot of people.
See, that's interesting. And a lot of times when I talk to actors, Stephen, they always bring up the theater as something that's their favorite thing that they do, or the ones that, you know, have really worked a lot and then finally have gotten their big break in some sort of way. And I really respect people in the theater because I was a former professional wrestler, and I had to perform where there was no real script. We had to go with how the crowd worked. We had to impromptu. That's the difference between you're in the theater compared to shooting TV or shooting movies where you're taking 16 takes or 25 takes. It's one and done in the theater, and it really teaches you the business, doesn't it?
And also when you are doing movies or television, the rhythm of the piece is created by the editor.
Yeah.
And the rhythm of the piece is created by the director. But when you're in theater, every night you walk on that stage, it is the actors that control the level of reality and the level of success or failure for that particular night. We control the pace, we control the rhythm. And it's what makes it both terrifying and enormously rewarding. I had this realization recently about acting and about theater, and that is that in our lives we have holy places. You know, maybe your hometown or the school you went to.
Yes.
When you're a theater actor, you have 4 holy places that are consistent. There is the stage, and every stage I've been on has been a holy place. And it's always the smell of the place, you know, that is always the same. It's the smell of kind of wood and concrete and electricity in a different combination. The stage is holy. The rehearsal room is holy, where you made your first discoveries as an actor and where the part first came to life. Your dressing room is holy, where you look at yourself in the mirror and put on the makeup and you get all of the cards and well wishes from people. And the bar afterwards is holy, where you sit around and have a beer and talk with your fellow actors that you got through another one, and hopefully you'll get through the one tomorrow too. When you do film or television, you do not have holy places. It's like I went back to Woodstock, Illinois, where we shot Groundhog Day.
Yes.
I went to the corner where Bill Murray stepped in the water, and I go, watch out for that first step into Jesus.
Love that. Yes, love that line. Yeah.
But it's not a holy place. It's just a place in a city, and I realize it's God. But in theater, it's not God. And that is why I think actors who do theater revere it so much. It has a hold on you, even though it's not as popular as television or film.
See, and that's so true. And does that have something to do with your book? Do you talk about how your love of theater in the book?
I'm sure I have a few theater stories and a few film stories and a few TV stories in the book. But the main idea of, I wrote, I guess the beginning is, I had a terrible accident.
Okay.
Terrible accident. 2008, I broke my neck.
Wow.
Riding a horse on the side of an active volcano in Iceland. Right? Like what could have possibly gone wrong.
Yeah, right.
Right? So I come back to America, and the doctor tells me I have a fatal injury. I mean, what a thing to tell a living patient.
Right, exactly, yeah.
So, so I'm in this hard brace. There's nothing I could do for several months. And I'm thinking, like, what the doctor told me was really kind of funny. That he tells his living patient that you have a fatal injury. And I'm so lucky I'm alive. And then I started thinking, what if what the doctor told me was true?
Right.
And what if I really died on that mountain in Iceland? What would I want my two boys to know about their dad? What would I want them to know about my life? And so, to fill up the time, I started writing true stories from my life that I wanted my boys to know about their father who died on the mountain in Iceland. And these stories became my first book, The Dangerous Animals Club. And Simon & Schuster called me after the book had been released about 3 months, and my editor said, Stephen, people really love the humor in your stories, but some of your stories have this spiritual twist to them, and people really love that. Is it possible you could do another book of true stories like the first one and have it all connected with a kind of spiritual through line and to have funny stories too?
Wow.
And so I said, sure, I could do that. I had no idea what I was going to do, but they wanted me to write another book, so I was going to write another book. So that's really my Adventures with God is kind of my Dangerous Animals Club Part 2. It tries to trace, well, just like how being an actor changed in my life, right? From loving monsters to being noble to like being on the Goldberg. In your life, the way you relate to your spiritual life changes.
Yes.
From when you're a kid going to Sunday school to when you're in college and you're seeing God in your girlfriend's eyes to where you're playing rock and roll in your 30s and you're feeling God when you hit that chord just right to later in your life when you get married and have kids and when you take that kid to the emergency room at 1 a.m.
Yeah.
Then the spiritual aspect of your life changes again. Then when you lose people in your life, your parents, your friends, when they start going, again, your spiritual life changes. And then you get to a place of perspective at the end, and your relationship to your spiritual life changes again. So My Adventures with God is a series of true stories. Most of them are funny that kind of trace the arc of the spiritual life of a person in their life.
So this is interesting because, again, the Dangerous Animals Club definitely talked about how you survived and almost died. And you started to bring some of that faith out, Stephen. Then somehow you get pulled into this where you have to bring your faith but bring funny stories as well. Would you say you have a strong faith, Stephen? After the accident that changed, or you always have been that way?
That's a tricky question because I would say my immediate answer was yes, absolutely yes. But then I would say that there have been periods of time in my life where, I I never went to synagogue. I never studied the Bible. I just kind of dropped it all.
Right. Okay.
And it didn't seem that important to me. But then when I came back to it in my 40s, I came back to it with a vengeance. And it was like when I was reading, when I began studying the Bible again, when I was in my 40s, I was like a guy in the desert who needed water. I was seeing things in there that I never saw before. Because, of course, you're seeing it with the eyes of a grown-up and not the eyes of a child. And you're seeing kind of the profundity or the wisdom that was laid out thousands of years ago. And then when I had my accident, whoa.
Yes.
When I had my accident, everything changed again because it's the story is in the new book, My Adventures with God. That is when I do believe, and don't roll your eyes at this one, this is when I do believe I personally experienced a miracle. And I don't mean a coincidence. I don't mean I'm the luckiest man in the world that I survived a fatal injury. I mean, all that is amazing, but I think above and beyond that, I experienced something that's inexplicable, that there is no logic in my mind. I'm a science guy.
Yeah, okay.
I'm a guy who's always loved science and read science, but I think something happened to me in that 3-month period of time that there is no explanation for,
right?
Except that I was touched with some kind of divine blessing during that period of time that completely changed the way I look at the world. And to me, that was a miracle.
Now, then, so the stories you have to make that connection to God, which I do in my whole life once I found God. And so that we probably didn't think we could get into this spiritual conversation, and I didn't expect that. I always look at, hey, I know about this actor, and let's go into this, and must be something funny. But it's interesting to hear that connection, because everything you do, even if it's something that's still not wrong, you're doing it for God. So you really can look at that spiritual aspect of everything that happens. It all happens for a reason and in some sort of way. So in your book, give us one example of a story. I have some other questions I'd like to ask you about your career and everything, but because everyone definitely needs to pick up the book. But tell me one story and how you connect that to God in the book, just a short part of it. Don't have to go into the whole detail.
Yeah, I'll dip into little things. I'll dip into a few little things. First of all, I divide the book up into 5 sections, like the 5 books of the Old Testament.
Okay.
Right?
Cool. All right.
Because I feel that those really define so many people's lives, that everybody has a Genesis. We all have family and friends. We all are interested where we came from. We have our plans and aspirations and terrors, like in the book of Genesis. So we all go into slavery, except instead of building pyramids, we lose ourselves in first love or terrible jobs or drugs or alcohol or being in graduate school forever. And then in Leviticus, we have a moment in the middle of our life where we go, stop, wait, this is what I am, like in the book of Leviticus. Yes. Then we lose people. Mortality enters our life, like in the book of Numbers. And then, like Moses telling the story of the journey to the children of Israel because they forgot why the hell they were walking for 39 years. You reach a point of perspective in Deuteronomy and you tell those stories. That is the arc of the book. But like, here's little examples. For example, I'm 10 years old and there's a plane crash. And everyone on the plane is killed except one 10-year-old boy on the back seat of the airplane. And the story is called The Boy in the Back Row. And after a week of struggle, the boy dies too. And I have a crisis of faith that for a 10-year-old, I cannot understand. And in my head, I said there are only 3 possibilities. Either there isn't a God, or there is a God, but he doesn't do a very good job, or there is a God. He may or may not be doing a very good job, but his job may be different from what I thought it was.
Right.
This is what I thought of when I was 10. So this is a story about a crisis of faith I had when I was 10. If you get into the Exodus part, it's about my first love relationship when I was in college.
Oh, wow.
And I had a dream in which I died in my dream, and I went somewhere. And there is no way I will never forget this dream or the people I met on the other side. I'll never forget them. But that dream, whether it be a dream or whatever, or prophecy, whatever it was, it affected my life in a very real way. Like that story is in Exodus. In Leviticus, I have the story of meeting Anne, the woman who became my wife, and becoming a father and getting married and returning to Judaism. Then in the book of Numbers, I talk about losing most of my family, my grandfather and grandmother and aunts and uncles, all within a short period of time, and coming back to the house that I used to play in as a child, and the whole house is empty now, except for a couple of surprises. I don't want to say that. I don't want to ruin that for people who want to read the book. And also meeting a survivor of Auschwitz when my mother passed away, and he became my drinking buddy for 2 years. And he told me his life at 2 years and how he fell in love at Auschwitz.
Oh.
And he survived, and she survived.
What a tremendous story. Oh, my.
Amazing. And then, of course, the story of my miracle in Deuteronomy. So there's examples of little touches throughout the book of faith and loss of faith and changing faith and the chasing. You know, in the Old Testament, and you could Google this, I'm not exactly sure of my Hebrew, but I think there are like 41, something like that, different names for the aspects of God.
Yes.
And you know, there's Eloheinu we know, and Adonai we know, and Yahweh we know. There's El Shaddai that we know. All of these names mean different things. El Shaddai could mean God of the mountain, but it also means the destroyer. And the idea being that God will destroy evil. You know, that this was the aspect of God that these people recognized. And so during our life, in a way, it's like the blind man and the elephant. How when you reach your hand into the darkness for God,
right? What
aspect do you feel? What aspect speaks to you? And for me, in my life, it has and I thank God for this, it has predominantly been the God of mercy. And it has predominantly in my life been the God of justice. Justice and mercy have been very important in my life.
Oh my.
And those aspects have guided me.
Now, Stephen, you talked about just touching upon each one of the areas of the 5 books and how you put it together in stories. But you bring up certain stories and acting in all those 5 books as well, right? Stuff you've done.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. And worse.
But
worse.
Yeah, but we don't want to. We
wanting to be a rock and roll singer. And
Stephen! So
falling out of love and having orgies.
Oh no! Geez, Steve. So Stephen, you were a saint, and now you're a sinner, and now you're a saint. Somehow, if we were defining it.
No. I think all of us, you know, there were perfectly good reasons why I was, quote, a sinner. The truth of the matter is, and this may be an inherently Christian principle that I embrace, and that is that I think man can't help it, but he's ultimately a corruptible substance. It is very difficult not to. But we become corrupted for very good reasons. Either we're in love, or we want to impress someone, or we feel we don't have self-confidence in a moment, and we make these mistakes throughout our life.
And different ages.
Book,
Right.
If you read My Adventures with God, you may be convinced that I'm the biggest moron that ever walked the face of the earth. I make so many amazing mistakes in my life, but I also made some good choices too.
Now, see, and that's the humble part of you, Stephen, in a certain way. But I just could see you as this kind of person. You walk. You're how tall are you, by the way, Stephen?
6'3".
6'3". Okay, I'm 6'10". Just to give you my. But in being that height, especially when a lot of actors are short, right, Stephen? That you're not I wouldn't say gangly, but you have this look to you. I can imagine you when you're just you're partying and stuff like that, and the young Stephen. And so that's what kind of stuff that we're going to find out by reading this book. It's a memoir. It's a memoir, but adding a lot of other perspectives. And I'm glad you brought those things up. But I think it's fantastic because people would not know someone from Hollywood thinks like that, right, Stephen? How do you keep yourself from the craziness of Hollywood?
Well, it helps being 66. It helps.
You don't look 66, Stephen. You don't look 66, not at all. No.
Well, thank you for that. Unless you were going to say that I look 76.
No way.
But it helps being married to a great woman who is enormously wise and who has saved my life 3 times, and who I've married twice.
Oh my gosh!
You know, we got married. She wasn't Jewish, and I was, so we had to get married by the justice of the peace. Then I had my broken neck, and she got me through that. Then I had open heart surgery, and that story's in the book too. She got me through that, and she protected me. You know, a lot of people think marriage is about the bedroom. It's about the emergency room. It's like in your life, you want to have a partner that you can trust at 2 a.m. in the emergency room, that will be your advocate, that will be there to make sure you are safe. She did that for me. And that's when, and then of all things, she converted to Judaism, and she never told me she was going to do it.
Wow.
It floored me, and so I said, I got to marry this girl again. And so that helps. But also, I remember I told my son, I think on my 50th birthday, and my son was, of course, out here in private school and all the influence of LA, and you could tell that everybody was interested in drugs a lot and sex a lot and all that. And I said to him, listen, at the age of 50, I could say this. What I regret, the main commodity you have, the most valuable thing is your time, even when you're young. And what I regret in my life are the friendships I didn't make, the books I didn't read, the plays and concerts I never went to. I don't regret thinking like, boy, I wish I got high a little more often. I don't. And those things end up in the regret column of how, I mean, when you're young, you do that kind of stuff and you go like, okay, there's a time to waste time, but then there's a time to realize that you have no time but the present. And that, in a way, keeps my head on. And also, if you've been in this business as long as I have, and I've been a professional actor,
right,
making my living as an actor and not as a bartender, but as an actor working in this business, you know, you either get jaded or you realize, you know, there are good days and bad days.
Yes.
Like any terminal illness.
Right.
Being an actor, you'll have good days and bad days, and you have to be a little zen about it. And you have to ride through the bad days. I have this saying I came up with, and I kind of learned it from the book of Exodus. And because to me, it's the theme of the book of Exodus. And that is everything is a doorway and everything is a prison. And in the book of Exodus, everybody comes to Egypt. It's a doorway. It's paradise.
Yes.
They don't expect it to be slavery, but it's slavery.
Yeah.
Then you go and you're trapped by the Red Sea. No, it's a doorway.
Yes.
Not a prison. And it opens up. And then you're stuck in the desert, but it's not a prison. You get the Ten Commandments. It
Yes.
becomes a doorway. In the book of Exodus, everything is and I keep telling myself this, that when you're in the prison, remember there's always going to be a door there, and you'll be able to find your way out. And when you're in the middle of good times and you think that your life is a doorway now, be aware
Oh, yes.
that there is a prison there waiting for you too.
So
and be alert.
that's so true.
And so I tell myself that, and that's what kind of keeps me on the straight and narrow.
See, and that's such a great point, Stephen, you make, that, you start growing in your faith, you start thinking everything's working out, and then bam, you get hit. You get hit with something that you just didn't expect, as your story talked about with the volcano and everything. Yes, that really hits you. And you look at your career; it's ups and downs, to the point now where all these opportunities are coming your way again. Are you a pessimist or an optimist now, saying, "Okay, well, things are going really well for me"? Am I going? And you said the last 2 years. Are you going to start saying, "Well, what's going to happen to me next"? Or are you just saying, I'm just going to trust God and understand that there could be prison very soon again?
I go with the latter. I go like it isn't a matter of if, but when the tide turns and it goes bad, and I just have to trust God. And every time that doesn't mean that I yield my life force to trying to make my life better. I try to say yes to things. And when you say yes to things, a lot of good things happen.
Yes.
And when you say no to things all the time, your life becomes smaller and smaller. So with a little judgment, like don't say yes to going on drunks or drugs or that kind of stuff. Don't, say yes to things that can enrich your life. I say yes to, and I know that there's going to be ebbs and flows. There's no way there's not. So when I'm having a good time like now and I'm working on 3 different shows, I put the money in the bank. I don't spend it. I know that I'm going to be the ant and not the grasshopper. I'm going to save, and I'm going to protect my family. Now God has given me this opportunity to protect my family. So I'm going to honor that and protect them.
Kind of like
put that money away.
Kind of like, Stephen, how Joseph told the Pharaoh, it was the Pharaoh, right? That to go ahead and make sure you're saving all the food, so that saving that harvest.
It not only saved Egypt, but it made Egypt the richest country in the world and made people come there, which is how Joseph ended up being reunited with his family, because they were starving and they came to Egypt. Now, one thing that people don't recognize from that story, which is very to the point I was saying, everything's a doorway, everything's a prison. Who is responsible for the slavery of the Hebrew people in the Bible? Well, you may be quick on the trigger and say, well, it's Pharaoh.
No.
Not really. It was Joseph.
Yeah.
Because in the great story where Joseph reveals himself to his brothers, and when he brings Benjamin out and says, here he is, he's safe, and the family is having a good cry. It's one of the most moving parts of the book of Genesis. there is a paragraph in the middle of those great revelations of Joseph saying, I'm your brother,